Hello, I'm so-called Mike, and in this video I'm gonna show you how I made the Viper-Kadachi figure. Starting with a somewhat head-shaped blob of clay, to which I'm adding two pre-baked bits as the eye, adding some cheekbones, and trying to make it more Viper-shaped. Usually I start with the head because it's the most important part of the figure. It also allows me to hold it by the head in the future. When I'm overall satisfied with the shape of the head, I'm adding the jawline and other recognizable details. When I'm done with the big details, I'm starting to work on the smaller and smaller parts. During the most of the work, I was checking on the accordance to the original. When I'm sure that everything is alright, I'm smoothing out every surface with the brush dipped in the isopropyl alcohol and bake it to preserve the progress. Off screen I made the frame out of the steel wire wrapped in the aluminum foil and covered in the thin layer of the polymer clay, then baked, and now I have the solid base to which I add even more clay, making sure that proportions looks alright. As with the head, when I'm done with the basic shapes, I'm starting to work on the more and more fine details, focusing on the zones in which there are less of the chance to accidentally touch them. In this case it's the bottom part of the neck, chest and the belly. As you can see, most of the footages are really sped up. If I were to show them uncut and in the original speed, the video would be at least 20 hours long. And I'm really struggling to voice over this like 20 minutes of recordings. Anyway, after I'm done with shaping of the underside scales in place with various tools, I'm moving over to the hind legs. Off screen I made the left leg, which probably would be more interesting because it has beans to sculpt. Other than that, I rarely use any pre-baked clothes because I think they're not gonna look as organic as if I sculpt them on top of the fingers. When I'm done with the feet, I'm moving upward towards the hips, slowly building up various scales. Now I'm switching my attention to the forelegs, bulking them up and refining the shapes of their shoulders. Before I proceed to add more details on the forelegs, I'm making these small shelves to which I'll attach the folded membranes. You can see that I use different types of the clay on the different part of the model. The one with the warmer tone is the Super Sculpey. It's more firm and overall easier to make more sharp edges. While the one with the more bluish tint is the Cosclay. It's much more soft, so it's easier to blend it seamlessly. It cures to more flexible material, but it's sticking to the tools and requires more work to refine the sharper details. Other than that, it is perfect for adding shapes over the Sculpey, because you can work on it without much pressure that could alter the unbaked Sculpey layer, or for thin parts like membranes, or fingers. like here, or even fur, that you'll see later. Anyway, as with the hind legs, I'm working on the details from the bottom to the top. So after I'm done with the feet and forearms, I'm starting to work on the shoulders. In between the tedious work of sculpting every scale, I'm also adding a little warmth of cast clay and pulling it out with a sharp tool, which simulates the texture of the fur. And after a final refining of the back and quick texturing with the rolling pin, followed by smoothing out with isopropyl alcohol, the figure is finally ready for another bake that will allow me to hold it without worrying that I will ruin any of the details. Right after the figure is cooled down, I'm starting to work on the neck, sculpting the scales, starting from the top towards the sides. Adding previously mentioned patches of the fur, and moving material back and forth to form more scales with a tool made out of squished wire and a random stick. Here are the last neck details I'm working on. Moving to the tail, I made a lot of scale feathered things and sticking them one by one, adding some fur and spikes in between. And when the last of the scales are done, I'm doing another wash over the figure with the isopropyl alcohol to smooth everything and bake. Oh, and I also picked some clumps formed on the fur. I'm priming figure black because it's the color of the shadows, so even if I miss some spots with the paints, chances are they are in shadow anyway. After primer, I'm applying the base coats, still dark and desaturated. Some greenish blues, purples and browns. I'm mixing various paints right in the airbrush cup, adjusting basically by feel. My goal now is to establish a base for the paintbrush, so that the shadows are not entirely black and paint for the brush covers well. After I'm tired of an airbrush and subsequent need to wear a respirator, I ventilated my room and brought out the wet palette. As with an airbrush, I'm continuing to mix paint by feel, but this time around I can apply it precisely, leaving a thick and defined shadow, by leaving just a bit of unpainted space in recesses. To mix up the greenish and purple scales, I'm applying a universal pinkish highlight to both colors so that they are looking more natural. On the upper body I mixed some browns and oranges to achieve this nice and vibrant color that I'll further improve later. As you can see from one of my thumbs, I often test tone and consistency of the paint by applying it to my nail. And here is another pass of a bit more orange tone. When the main color of the scales looks good enough, I started applying some light yellow to every part that's soon to be bright yellow. Here's my idea. I have a nice saturated yellow ink that is transparent by nature, but if I apply it over a light color, it'll give me this nice yellow that you can see from a test scale. And yes, I tested how it'll look after painting half of the model with it. Thankfully it turned out great, but I added some pure black over the dark brown that also tinted a little bit yellow. At this point I was doing back and forth, switching from one part to the other. A bit of highlight on the beans, painting black nails, a bit of dry brush on the back, a base coat on forgotten to this point membrane. For the eyes, I used the same yellow ink, this time though using pale sand as a base coat. Then I painted the place for the pupils red, added some bright yellow to the sides, and finally painted the pupils itself with a pure black, achieving his signature looks. I did a coat of terracotta to the fur in hopes of defining it compared to the rest of the body. And then there were a pass of orange and finally clear yellow, that can be bright if applied really thick, leaving some texture on the way. Which is fine in that case. As a final touches, I added some diamond-shaped spots on the membranes, painted the tips of the spikes red, and added the black stripes to the aforementioned spikes. Moving to the base, I was eager to try some texture paste from Vallejo, specifically mud and snow. They're nice, but a bit expensive in my opinion. Anyway, I slapped some snow and mud, added some dry tufts and painted the rim black, completely finishing the model. And that's it. Let me know if you want to see more of that stuff. I also will be glad to receive any advice on the video itself. Thank you all for watching. Bye.